Scenic Hotel Group, a place to stay no matter your staycation. From the Legacy Collection, Scenic Hotels, Suites and Resorts, and Heartland Hotels. Find your place to stay at scenichotelgroup.co.nz.
The biggest day in American sport is just a couple of weeks away. Super Bowl 57. This weekend, the championship games in the NFC and the AFC to find out two Super Bowl participants. Eagles against the 49ers in Philadelphia in the NFC Championship game. Chiefs against the Bengals in Kansas City in the AFC Championship game. One of these four are going to be Super Bowl winners.
McCaffrey right up the gut and in. Touchdown, San Francisco.
So essential to his team's hopes. 3rd and 7. To the end zone. Open! Wide open! Hurst hauls it in for another Cincinnati touchdown. And Mahomes steps up, throws to the back. Touchdown! Marquez Valdez Scantling.
3rd down and 5. Hurts will look to throw. He's got Goddard with a one-handed catch. Dallas Goddard in. Touchdown, Philadelphia. What a catch, and he turns it into a score from 16.
Let's get you to the US. Mark Schofield is a former college quarterback who now writes NFL and other sports too for SB Nation. He joins us to break it all down. Let's start in the NFC, Mark. The Eagles and the 49ers, the two most dominant teams in the NFC meeting with a trip to the Super Bowl on the line. Eagles were number 2 defensively and number 3 offensively. The 49ers were top defensively and number 5 offensively. The only two NFL teams ranked in the top 5 in both categories. In a game like this, what is more important, offense or defense?
Well, I think going into this game, Jason, what's probably going to end up being more important are the two offenses and perhaps the two quarterbacks. Obviously, Jalen Hurts and what he has done this year for the Philadelphia Eagles, turning himself into an MVP candidate. So much of what the Eagles do on offense, both in the running game and, of course, in the passing game, starts with Jalen Hurts. Now he's back fully healthy from that right shoulder injury. They used his legs last week against the New York Giants. And what the Eagles can do with Jalen Hurts, particularly in the run game, will give them perhaps an advantage up front in this game, because when you think about how defenses are trying to play in the NFL today, keeping both safeties deep, trying to almost dare you to run the football, when you can use the quarterback as a run threat, when you can use the quarterback's legs, that gives you a numbers advantage up front down in the box. And so I think Hurts is going to be particularly important, obviously, when the Eagles have the football. And then Brock Purdy. This has been a tremendous story to see this year. This rookie quarterback, 7th round pick, last player drafted in the NFL draft. To see the way he's run this offense, to see that the way that this 49ers offense really hasn't missed a beat since he stepped into the lineup. Do we finally see a game where he makes some mistakes, or does he continue to play at a very, very high level, given his draft status, given his inexperience? And so I think these two offenses, these two young quarterbacks, they're a huge part of this game.
Yeah, Brock Purdy's such an interesting story, as you've outlined. I think he becomes the 3rd youngest quarterback ever to start an AFC or NFC championship game. 7-0, so he's going along okay at the moment. Can he deal with Philly's defense, though, Mark?
That's going to be a huge question for him, because what Philadelphia is able to do so well is to get pressure with 4. They're one of the best defenses in the entire NFL at sort of getting pressure with 4, right? Anytime as a defense, you can do that. You can rush 4, you can drop 7 into coverage. It gives you an opportunity to really make some things happen, to really pressure the quarterback. And we've seen, even over the course of these 2 playoff games from Brock Purdy, there are moments where if he's pressured, if he might bail from the pocket a little early in the play, he might sort of try to make something happen with his legs. But it is important to remember, they faced last week in the Dallas Cowboys one of the better defenses at getting pressure with 4 in the entire NFL. Dallas's ability to get pressure with 4 was up there above the Eagles in that pressure rate. And so they've already been tested by a defense that can get pressure with 4. Purdy's already faced a defense that can get pressure with 4. Now, he'll have to do it again. But I think what we've seen over the past, week or so is a young quarterback that even facing a defense that can pressure you with 4, he's able to stand in there. And maybe he doesn't make all the right throws. Maybe he doesn't make every throw the way it should be. Maybe there are throws that he sometimes misses. But he had some impressive throws against the Cowboys, particularly to George Kittle, and I think that could continue Sunday.
We'll get to the AFC Championship game in a moment, but do you think the Super Bowl winner comes from the NFC?
I think it's a very hard question, Jason, because these are four fantastic teams. And like I sort of said earlier, I think regardless of how Sunday turns out, we're going to be treated to a fantastic game, whether it's, Eagles, Chiefs, Eagles, Bengals, 49ers, Chiefs, 49ers, Bengals. I think we're going to get a fantastic Super Bowl. But looking at these two teams in the NFC and how complete they are, you just alluded to it, you just walked us through it at the outset, top 5 offenses, top 5 defenses. They can beat you in a number of different ways. They pose a lot of problems for you with what they do offensively. The Eagles and the way they use the quarterback in the run game, the way that they can use the tight end, the way they can use those 2 receivers. Obviously, the 49ers and their sort of 21 personnel package where you've got 2 running backs on the field and Kyle Juszczyk and Christian McCaffrey, but they can put Deebo Samuel at running back. They could put McCaffrey at wide receiver. They can put Juszczyk at tight end. They can move these players around. It stresses you a lot defensively. It asks a lot of the guys on the field on the defensive side of the ball to sort of match up against those, varied talents at these various offensive positions. And so I think, yes, we have 4 great teams, but the way that these 2 teams in the NFC, the Eagles and the 49ers, can cause problems, the way they're complete teams on both sides of the ball, I think it's likely that one of those 2 teams will win the Super Bowl.
All right, let's go to the AFC Championship game then. The Cincinnati Bengals trying to get back to the Super Bowl for a second straight year against the Chiefs in Kansas City. These two met a year ago for an overtime thriller in which Cincinnati came back from, 18 points down to clinch a first Super Bowl trip in 33 years. Are they similar teams, Mark, a year on from that?
They're somewhat similar teams. I mean, I think certainly the Bengals have a lot of similar aspects to what they do on the offensive side of the ball, getting the ball out quickly out of Joe Burrow's hands. The defense, some of the pieces have moved around a little bit, but it's a very similar defense as well. Some names have changed on both sides of the ball for the Cincinnati Bengals and obviously for the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are a bit different. Obviously, Tyreek Hill now down in Miami with the Dolphins. So the offense looks a little bit different than it did last year. It might not have that sort of explosive over-the-top element, obviously, with Tyreek Hill's departure to the Miami Dolphins. But this was really, Jason, a process that had started, at the start of last year. When Patrick Mahomes first came onto the world stage, he was averaging something like 8.6 yards per attempt. He was really pushing the ball downfield. And that's ticked down over the past couple of years. Past 2 years, it's been something like 7.5, where he was tops in the NFL two or 3 years ago. He's now sort of middle of the pack. As defenses, as I talked about earlier, have shown 2 deep safety looks and really tried to keep things in front of them, Mahomes and the Chiefs in particular have evolved their offense. There's a lot more underneath passing. Obviously getting Travis Kelce, their incredibly talented tight end, involved, using the backside of the backfield. So the Chiefs offense has undergone a bit of a metamorphosis, but a lot of the names are the same. A lot of the players are the same. And a lot of the storylines that played out in last year's AFC Championship game, I think, will be a factor this weekend as well.
Yeah, the quarterbacks, you mentioned Mahomes and Joe Burrow for the Bengals. Patrick Mahomes carrying an injury. So is an injured Patrick Mahomes better than a fully fit Joe Burrow, or is it the other way around?
I think an injured Patrick Mahomes is still one of the best quarterbacks on the planet. We even get some numbers to back that up. After he had his ankle injury against Jacksonville, he still had an expected points added of 0.28 per dropback, which was second best in the NFL this year behind a healthy Patrick Mahomes. He's a very talented quarterback. And as he told us this week, he said, look, I've got a right ankle injury, sure, but I make so many throws from different platforms, from, different bases, different mechanical postures in the pocket, that having an ankle injury isn't really something to worry about. So he's still an extremely talented quarterback. Now, to his credit, Joe Burrow is as well. He's, been a robot in a sense for this Bengals offense this year. Second fastest time to throw this season in the regular season behind only Tom Brady. He's been the fastest quarterback in time to throw during the playoffs. He's so good at diagnosing what you're doing structurally as a defense before the play begins and then breaking you down with his mind quickly after the snap. So if he's presented with a matchup that he likes on the outside, a matchup that he likes underneath, he's going to take advantage of it. He's going to get the ball out quickly. He's going to neutralize your pass rushers as a result of that and put his receivers in a position to be very successful. These are two of the game's premier young quarterbacks. And this is perhaps a budding rivalry that we might see for the next 5, 10, 12 years. I'm very excited to see it play out on Sunday. I think Mahomes is the game's best quarterback, but Joe Burrow is right on his tail.
We've talked about 4 quarterbacks there, Burrow, Mahomes, also Purdy and Hurts as well. But you wrote a great piece on SB Nation about 12 unsung heroes who can lift their teams to Super Bowl 57. Can you pick out a couple for us, Mark, across these 2 games who we might want to keep an eye on?
Well, certainly. We could start with that AFC game we were just talking about. And I think when fans are watching this game, there's obviously going to be that tendency to watch the quarterbacks, see what's happening there. But particularly when the Chiefs have the football, pay attention to the matchup on the interior between defensive tackle DJ Reader of the Bengals and that interior offensive line of the Chiefs with center Creed Humphrey, right guard Trey Smith, left guard Joe Thuney, because DJ Reader is a fantastic talent. A lot of what the Bengals do on the interior of their defensive line starts with him. A lot of what they do on defense overall starts with him. His ability to occupy blockers, his ability to quickly penetrate into the pocket and perhaps provide a little bit of an interior pass rush. And when we're talking about Patrick Mahomes perhaps being limited with his mobility, interior penetration could pose him some problems. How well does that trio hold up on the other side of the ball? Humphrey, Thuney, Trey Smith, do they contain DJ Reader, or does Reader become a disruptive force on Sunday? That's certainly something to watch. When we look at the NFC game, I'm very curious, Mike McGlinchey, the right tackle of the 49ers, how does he hold up against those 4 pass rusher looks that we've seen from the Eagles? We know Trent Williams on the left side of that 49ers offensive line, one of the game's best left tackles. We know what he can do, but do we see some pressure looks off the other edge? Do we see Mike McGlinchey struggle, or does he hold up his end of the bargain? He's a player to watch there. And also when the 49ers have the football, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who they acquired before the start of the season, a defensive back for the Philadelphia Eagles. When you're thinking about sort of trying to slow down George Kittle, the Eagles a lot of times this year have used Gardner-Johnson against tight ends, whether it was Pat Freiermuth, tight end for the Pittsburgh Steelers, whether it was Logan Thomas, the tight end for the Washington Commanders. He's played some cornerback, he's played some safety, but I'm very curious to see, Jason, if he draws that George Kittle assignment when the Eagles play man coverage on Sunday.
All right, Mark. Well, as you've said, it's going to be a great Super Bowl regardless. There are 4 possible outcomes for Super Bowl 57. What is the best matchup for the neutral fan?
Wow. I mean, like I said, 4 fantastic games, no matter what happens. I mean, I think we're going to be in for a treat in Super Bowl 57, regardless of how Sunday plays out. But I think the matchup that perhaps fascinates me the most might be if we get, a rematch of some Super Bowls from the past. If we get a Bengals 49ers game, because you're going to get Lou Amorano, the defensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals, matched up against Kyle Shanahan and everything that they do on the offensive side of the ball. You'll get DeMeco Ryans, the defensive coordinator for the 49ers, who's in the mix for a lot of potential head coaching jobs, matched up against Brian Callahan, Zach Taylor, and that Bengals offense. Fred Warner, the middle linebacker, against Joe Burrow, the quarterback, who, as I just talked about, can break defenses down with his mind at a very high level. These could all be 4 fantastic matchups, but for neutral fans, I think a Bengals 49ers Super Bowl would be fascinating.
Mark, it's been such a pleasure to get your analysis and your insight into the AFC and NFC championship games. We can't wait over here to see how it all plays out. Thanks so much for joining us across New Zealand.
Jason, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. Hope to do it again soon, and I hope everybody really enjoys the games this weekend as well as Super Bowl 57. It should all be fantastic football to watch.
Good man. Thanks, Mark. Mark Schofield there. Joining us, 49ers, Eagles, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Bengals, Chiefs, 12:30 tomorrow afternoon. Winners go to Super Bowl in a fortnight's time.